The Sopranos is a show that explores a lot of complex themes: moral ambiguity, identity, mental health, the slow collapse of the American dream. But every now and again, the show dives into something more strange. Throughout the show, some of the characters will experience something surreal, things that don't really belong to its grounded reality. Not ghost stories in the traditional sense, but not full on horror either. The show instead leans in more of an ambiguity approach. It never clearly states whether these moments are real or imagined. Instead, what matters is how the characters react to them. And in that way, the show mirrors something very real about human behavior. When we encounter things we don't understand, we tend to impose meaning on them through belief, fear, or personal interpretation. And it's these reactions of the characters that reveal very different ways people react to the things they can't understand. Polly Walnuts, one of the most beloved characters in the show, has a very interesting relationship with ambiguity and his own search for meaning. For him, nothing is random. Every strange moment carries weight. Every coincidence feels like a sign. The world is filled with signals, warnings, and hidden consequences that exist just beneath the surface of everyday life. A big part of his worldview comes from his own fears and guilt. He is deeply uncomfortable with uncertainty, especially when it comes to moral consequence and death. Polly is constantly surrounded by death being in the mob. He has taken lives, and he has watched many of his closest friends die. This constant proximity to death doesn't make him more rational, it makes him more superstitious. His guilt is more complex than simple remorse for his actions. It is rooted less in what he has done, and more in an existential fear of unseen spiritual or religious consequences, forces he cannot fully understand or control. Because of this, he struggles to sit with ambiguity and instead externalizes it, turning uncertainty into superstition, signs, and blame placed onto forces outside himself. But Polly is only one way the show explores his need for meaning. Tony Soprano represents almost the opposite response. Where Polly turns ambiguity into belief, Tony turns it inward. Tony is another character that has brushes with strange, ambiguous moments. But unlike Polly, his experiences rarely take a concrete or external form. They are internal, psychological, and often occur through dreams. His dreams are some of the most prophetic elements in the show, even if they're framed as subconscious processes rather than something explicitly supernatural. In his dreams, Tony's identity is constantly put into question. The roles he relies on to define himself, father, mob boss, provider, begin to break down. Instead of being in control, he becomes passive, confused, and often subjected to judgment he doesn't fully understand. These dreams strip away the structure of his waking life and expose how much of his identity depends on performance rather than something internal or stable. This becomes most prominent when Tony is put into a coma after nearly dying, entering the most otherworldly space in the series. Tony gets completely removed from himself. He inhabits an entirely different identity as Kevin Finnerty. He has no connection to his past life, no access to the roles that once defined him. He isn't a boss or even important. He's ordinary, disoriented, and vulnerable. The loss of identity here is not chaotic, but precise. It forces Tony into a version of existence where the things he once used to justify himself no longer apply. This coma experience becomes the closest that Tony comes to death. He sees lights in the distance and finds himself being drawn toward a house filled with figures from his life, dead friends, relatives, and people from his past, who all gently invite him inside, urging him to let go. This sequence carries the most emotional texture of acceptance, but never confirms whether this is an afterlife, a hallucination, or the mind constructing meaning at the edge of a shutdown. Tony does not give in, however. He resists the pull and ultimately returns to consciousness, as if pulled back from an ending only he partially understands. It's this near-death experience that causes him to wonder about his identity and where he'll eventually go when his time is up. He is given a second chance at living his life, and for once has clarity for how dangerous and out of control his life has become. But however, he ultimately goes back to his old ways and puts him back on the road where he's doomed to go. His experience of ambiguity tends to remain private and internal, unfolding through dreams and psychological breakdowns that never fully resolve into belief or explanation. Even when he's confronted with moments that border on the surreal, he rarely assigns them external meaning. Instead, he absorbs them, questions them, and ultimately returns to a state of uncertainty. This difference becomes especially clear in how Tony responds when someone else attempts to give ambiguity a concrete spiritual form. Like when Polly tells him of a strange moment when he had an encounter with the Virgin Mary.
I saw the Virgin Mary.
Fuck strippers, we could have had a shrine.
Tony immediately dismisses him and makes fun of the claim. On the surface, it plays as humor, Tony refusing to indulge Polly's superstition, but structurally, the moment is doing something more important. It reveals the gap between the two ways of processing the unknown. The Sopranos reveals a very realistic portrayal of how humans handle ambiguous things. When reality doesn't fully explain itself, there are a lot of mysterious and strange things we don't have answers to. Either huge mysteries that everyone questions, or more personal things like the strange things you might have seen as a kid, or weird coincidences that you come across from time to time. Everyone has their own reactions, opinions, and beliefs when it comes to these moments, either having a profound effect on some, or just another thing to brush away. Everyone has probably met someone like Polly, who thinks there's a deep meaning to coincidences, dreams, and the unexplainable. Then people like Tony, who might think more logically, don't necessarily believe that there's something supernatural happens, just an actual coincidence or something we don't have enough information about. Neither response fully resolves the ambiguity they're confronted with. Instead, they represent different ways of stabilizing reality when it stops making sense, one through belief, and the other through breakdown. And in that contrast, the show suggests something quietly unsettling. That meaning is not something we discover in the world, but something we construct in order to survive it. Thank you.